Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers. We have a guest, but before I introduce the guest, I just need to ask my co-host directly on air, who hurt you? Who hurt you to make you do that to your head?
I just want to say that I have also done this to my head, so I feel like Charles is insulting me too.
Bradley has decided to cosplay Crosshair and shave all of his hair off, and I'm just wondering, did your situationship break up with you? Did your sugar daddy not buy you a car? What's going on here?
You know what? Every gay has that moment in their life where they dye their hair blonde. And instead of doing that, I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to do a blonde era this time around because then my hair is going to be fried. So instead, I just shaved it all off because I was like, why the fuck not?
Yeah, I've shaved my head before. I was telling them before about how I've done that too. And it's great. And it was like my butch lesbian phase. It was fine.
Well, when you do it, it's cool and avant-garde. When Bradley does it, it's ridiculous.
No, I did it because I was hot at a child's birthday party.
That was a valid reason.
Right, I like that.
Anyway, mocking my co-host for his choices aside, we're gonna ignore the whole bleach blonde thing and definitely do not go back and look at some of my older pictures. But guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hope. I hang out with Charles on For Light and Dice, and I'm also a podcaster and a freelance writer, and I voluntold them to let me be on this episode because it has my boy doing wonderful things, and I will fight for this episode because it's a delight, and it's also going to give Charles a reason to yell at Bradley about Star Wars Resistance because this is a very Vox Vortex 5000 kind of episode.
Yeah, it's in my notes. It's in my notes. Specifically, a moment I was like, yes, this reminds me of Resistance.
And you can tell because, the crew who worked on Resistance, especially Jennifer Corbett, she got her start on Resistance, and this feels like a very Resistance episode. So, but hi, I'm Hope.
Well, Hope, you mentioned that you're on For Light and Dice with me, and we had Colton, who plays One In, the quote protocol droid end quote on last week's episode. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you play on For Light and Dice?
Well, her name is Gaz. She is a Gazo because, again, I love Star Wars Resistance and we don't have enough Gazos. And she's kind of become like the de facto aunt of the group and kind of taking care of everybody else, and making sure everyone's eating and stuff. But she's an ex-retail worker who hated her life and decided to jump on a ship and go across the galaxy with strangers because that was better than retail. And now she's on this crazy adventure and taking care of a bunch of people, and she's kind of sassy and she flirts with everybody, and I love her. She's my baby.
So the Gazo is like the owl thing from Resistance?
Yes. They've only appeared in Resistance and nowhere else.
That's
incorrect.
So cute.
They have
also they appear somewhere else.
They've appeared in the Ahmed Best show. Oh my god, Jedi Temple Challenge as well. In one of the story flashbacks, and those are considered partially canon. And they are, I think, in one of the young adult, the young reader comics. There's a Gazo in one of those as well. But there's never been a girl Gazo, which is why I specifically wanted to play a girl.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting creature, so I like the way it looks.
I love her design. Twi'leks are my favorite alien species, and Gazos are my second. They're a bunch of endearing, dumb, big birds, and I love them all.
I love that.
I really enjoy on the show because if you've listened to the show, you know that the character that I play, Win, and Gaz have an interesting rivalry, alliance sort of relationship where they're the two adults of the group, but Gaz is the adult in the sense of, no honey, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna make sure you're fed. We're gonna make sure you get a souvenir. Here, hold my hand so you don't get lost. And
but
Win
if
is
you fuck with her children, she'll stab you.
Yes. Win is very, stop putting your head that close to the stove. You're gonna burn it off. No, you can't have Kit Kats for dinner. Stop it.
Oh my god, we are the parents of the group. Oh my god, no.
It's like the grumpy, like some grumpy aunt and uncle that you like dumped the kids on. Like they're the single ones at the Thanksgiving, so they have to watch all of the kids, and they're like, I'm so old and tired. I hate all of this.
Well, that's when. And meanwhile, Gaz is like, I'm living that dink life. I brought you your PS5 that your parents wouldn't get you for Christmas.
true.
Here you go, child.
It's true. You know, Hope puts a lot of love and heart into this character that she plays, and it really comes across, like, in the interactions. I don't know how Gaz feels about One In.
Gaz doesn't know how she feels about One
No one knows how they feel about One In.
I think going through the first story arc, I think at first she honestly thought that they were just a protocol droid and a Jizz Whaler and nothing more. And then she started to see that there was a much more undersided kind of underbelly to One In. And I think she's finally like, so she wasn't sure if they were going to kill her or not. And now it's come around of like, after you escape a diner being destroyed and go through like mass casualty events and stuff, you just kind of trauma bond with people. And she's like, yeah, one in didn't get me shot with a bounty hunter, so I guess they're fine.
So definitely
trauma bonding is that's the name of the game of the Phantasmal Squad crew.
Please.
Trauma bonding.
Yeah. We just finished our first story arc. They've released, at time of recording this episode, there will be the first episode of the second story arc, where we get to go to a planet that has not really been seen in Star Wars, which is quite exciting. Chris has to make up some lore, which is great. But definitely go check out For Light and Dice if you have not already. It's fantastic. All of the characters are great. Chris is a fantastic DM. There is murder and mayhem and trade goods.
And comedy and horrible flirting that always fails. I think I've yet to actually succeed in flirting at any time.
And there's at least one horrible lime green t-shirt. And I will say this ahead of time. There is a scene with a Lothcat hat in the upcoming episode that changed my life.
I'm so sad that wasn't
changed my life.
I'm so sad that wasn't in this week's episode. I was so looking forward to it.
I won't spoil it, but if you listen to For Light and Dice, listen for the Lothcat hat scene.
By the way, it was specifically a Loth rat hat.
Oh, it's a Loth rat hat.
Yes. I don't think you heard me because I
thought it was a Lothcat hat.
No, because it's Mickey Mouse here.
Oh my god!
That's the whole point.
Oh my god!
You didn't hear me. And I
didn't even realize it.
Whatever. But yeah, Charles is just being super sweet. Like he put so much heart into Win, and we all put so much like heart and love and care into these characters, and it's just the greatest joy and pride of my life to be able to hang out with these cool people all the time.
I can confidently say, and this is the highest praise I can give my DM and my fellow players, that if you like the High Republic, you will like this show. Before we move on to a show that is, in my opinion, not quite as good as For Light and Dice, but still basically okay, I have a massive thing Charles fucked up that we need to address.
That I DM'd you about?
Well, here's the thing. You were not the only person.
What did you do this time?
So... thank you to the multiple people, Hope included, who have let me know that thanks to the fact that I was doing this on the fly and was checking the IMDb page and completely missed quite a few things, I missed basically all of Tasia Valenza plays Tawny Ames in the Bad Batch episode Solitary Clone. Basically all of her Star Wars credits I missed. So I'm going to rectify that now because this woman has been in a lot of Star Wars. In working in reverse chronological order, we are going to go with in Star Wars Resistance, and this is the one that Hope DM'd me about. She is the voice of Venetia Doza.
How dare you? She is the voice of the greatest mother of the series and one of the best mothers of the galaxy, Venetia Doza. Put some respect in her name, boy.
In the Clone Wars, she is the voice of Shak Ti. And then as far as other video game work, she has a pretty long stretch of time. She's not been in a lot of Star Wars games, but they go back because she was Kaleo Dejanis in 2011 onward in Star Wars The Old Republic, as I mentioned. But she was also several voices, including Aura Singh in Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds in 2001. She was Aura Singh again in Star Wars Demolition in 2000. And in 1999, in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the video game, game. She's the voice of Gungan female, Coruscant female, and one of the two, I think it's Twi'leks that hang out with, it's Twi'leks that hang out with Sebulba. So, sorry I missed her entire Star Wars resume. There you go. You've now learned that Tawny Ames has been voicing Star Wars characters since 1999.
Just a few characters. Not
a
too
few
many.
characters. She's mainly known as Vanessa Doza and Shakti. But
Thank you, mistake. That's why you always look up the Wikipedia, not the IMDb.
I usually do, or I usually spot it on the IMDb, like I did that. But this time I was trying to get through the episode so fast. And I remember like my eyes going over Resistance because I usually say the Star Wars at the end, but I just completely forgot to bring it up. So now that massive oversight on my part is out of the way, thank you to everyone who let me know about that. I'm glad you're listening to the show and enjoying it. Bradley, do you want to take us into the latest episode of The Bad Batch, which is what we will be talking about?
Absolutely. So this week, we're talking about episode 4, where the team enters the colorful and dangerous world of racing. Charles and Hope. So you know the drill. What's one thing you liked, one thing you did not? I'll let Hope start since you're our guest.
Can I say all of it? That my boy Tech got to do things. So I loved this episode. My one thing though, I really like. Does that have to be a shallow thing or a deep thing?
It can
Make
be
it
either
shallow
or.
as fuck. No, make it shallow as fuck.
Yeah.
I don't
Good,
care.
'cause it was
this
hot
show is
and-
not that deep.
Excuse you.
I would like some of the show to be that deep in me specifically, but
No, so here's the thing about me. I'm asexual and I am only like really just like, oh my God, like over fictional characters, because when it comes to like real life, I get very sexually pulsed. And I knew I liked this episode because Tech is my boy. He's always been my favorite Bad Batch member. Like I love him being neurodivergent coded, and I feel so much with him. I relate to him so much. And I was watching this episode and I was like, I really enjoyed it and stuff. And I get to the end after the racing and the credits are rolling and I'm sitting there and I just kind of go quiet and I'm like, I'm hot. I'm so hot right now. Oh my God. Just to see him like so active and doing stuff. Like season 2 has been feeding my tech love. And it's just, it's so great to me. And I think that was probably my favorite thing about the episode was him finding something outside of the batch. Because I think that's both very important. And I do think it ties back to Crosshair last week of like why Crosshair stays with the Empire versus the batch finding things outside of their programming, because he says to Teo he's genuinely interested in racing. If he continues this, it becomes a hobby, which becomes a part of his character, which becomes a piece of himself, and it helps him develop his personality. So I really enjoyed watching him find something that he genuinely enjoys. That's not clone work, that's not soldier work, that's not mercenary work, and it's outside the batch, something he like fundamentally really enjoys. So that would be like my small thing, because that's what Crosshair doesn't have, and that's why he stays, because he's not ready to face who he is when he's not defined by his trait.
You do have to pick one thing you disliked.
Oh, one thing I dislike. It might not be about the episode itself, but it's been really frustrating hearing the whole filler label being thrown around with this episode. I really hate that label. It really makes me upset because character development is plot, and I think in like this world of binge watching and streaming where we've gone from like the old cable days of getting like 24 episode shows to like 10 or 12, we've lost like so much of the character development, like adventures of the week kind of episodes, because this had big character development, especially for Sid. And this probably set up some major implications at the end of the season, like further down the line. And this had some like smaller, because I think Spoilers of War did a better job with Tech, but this still of course developed him, and character development is plot. And I knew you were going to ask me this, so I pulled it up. There's a quote from Amphibia creator Matt Braley talking about the dreaded filler word, and he said, "Be careful about skipping episodes because you think they look like filler. You may get to the end and not realize you missed the journey completely." So like I think that's probably been the thing I disliked is I came out of this episode loving it. It's probably my personal favorite Bad Batch episode ever, just to get a line and everyone being like, this episode's not important, it's filler, and I'm like, it's not.
I would agree 100% with that. I think part of the beauty of the animated shows too is that they do get to have, when they do an episode and it's really successful like this, where it really is showing you something new or something interesting about the characters or their relationship with each other, their relationship with themselves, that can be really good. Like part of my issue with Infested, which is Bradley and I's least favorite episode from season 1, part of my issue with that episode was that it was a glaring missed opportunity to do something interesting with Sid's relationship with the Batch, and the episode didn't take it. So it was very nice, and I'll touch on it a lot when we get specifically into the episode, but it was really, really nice, yeah, to get some development on Sid and Tech, and mostly Sid, but even that was really, really nice, and we got to see a little bit too of like her relationship with Omega, and it's fun. You're allowed to just have fun on these shows.
Yeah, to quote shitty-ass Perrin from Andor, what does everything have to be sad and boring in Star Wars all the time? I mean,
I will permit this because in this case, Perrin is correct.
Yeah, I just when it comes to filler, like I always think of an example of like my best friend and her husband, and like they wanted to watch Clone Wars, but they didn't want to watch like all of Clone Wars, so they pulled up a list of like the quote unquote most important plot episodes of Clone Wars, and so when they got to season 7, they were watching Ahsoka fight Maul, and they're like, "Why is Ahsoka able to beat Maul?" And I literally sat down and wrote out every battle Ahsoka had over all 7 seasons. I was like, she's faced Grievous like 2 to 3 times. She's done this and this and this. And it's because they didn't watch the episodic quote unquote filler episodes, and they missed the journey of how Ahsoka could get to that point.
Are you ready for my one thing I liked and one thing I didn't?
Yes.
Okay, so my one thing I liked about this episode was it's just a really well-directed episode. Like, there's 3 separate race scenes. All of them are really engaging and entertaining and action-packed. Especially the last one I really liked. I was watching it and I was like, yeah, this is the kind of thing that I feel like George Lucas would have wanted to watch, because he famously loved racing stuff, shoved it into Phantom Menace. It was just a really well-directed episode. And that can be tricky to do, to make it so that it doesn't seem like it's repetitive or it's, repeating itself over and over again. But I really liked that. I was watching, I was like, yeah, this is some really impressive action directing, impressive editing. They just really nailed the racing scenes in this one, which definitely makes sense because it's a lot of the same team as Resistance,
yes,
which was a racing show or a show that took place on a racing platform. I think my one thing that I dislike, I think Wrecker's role in this episode I wasn't very happy with. I was glad that Tech was getting some spotlight and some interesting thing, but Wrecker didn't do a whole lot this episode except make a handful of quips and stand there asking questions. And I thought that there was a great little moment where Wrecker's like, you can't be in last, you have to be out in front to win. Like, that was the kind of moment that I wanted to see with his interplay with Tech, and I didn't feel like I got that at all. I feel like Omega had a great little moment where she stands up for Sid. Sid had character development this episode. Tech had character development this episode. But Wrecker was just kind of there. And I just felt like that was another missed opportunity on the show's part.
Interesting.
Bradley, what about you? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
So I kind of it's like a half agree with you, but also kind of the similar thing. Like, I feel like I really liked the fact that Hunter and Echo were not in this episode, because I think what we learned last week was that if you center on one character of the Bad Batch and you give them an episode to breathe and like have character development and give them something to do that's not necessarily with the rest of the batch, like, it's really nice to see, and it gives them a lot of character development. And I think like this episode was truly Tech's episode, and I think you're right. I think honestly, even Wrecker could have not been in this episode. You could have taken him out, it wouldn't have changed a thing. Like, if you just had Omega and Sid helping Tech do the race or whatever, like, that would have been perfect. I think that would all you needed, so that's one thing I actually really liked about the episode. One thing I did not like about the episode was that they didn't just go ahead and make this pod racing, because I love pod racing, and I'm with George Lucas. I think pod racing is great. You've already developed another kind of like you have pod racing, and then now you have your stupid resistance racing, whatever that show is. And then you have now this third racing. Like, why do we need all these different racing? I get that there's a universe of like planets and they all have their own version of whatever racing, but like you could have just done pod racing and called it a day. And that's
Buddy,
what
I got
wanted.
some bad news for you about how many different types of racing are in the Star Wars galaxy. There
I'm just
are
saying.
so many.
I wanted it to be pod racing, okay? I just want to see tech in a pod race. That's all I wanted, okay?
I just want to see tech in my pod. Sorry. Oh, I was told to say this. So, I would like, well, oh God, what did I say? Now I'm embarrassed. That I would like to see Tech's to take and move around Tech's gear shift. It was something like that.
Okay.
You told me to say it beforehand, and I forgot.
Yeah, it was something like I'd like to move Tech's gear shift faster or something. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the name of the episode, Faster.
The innuendo is it's his penis.
For those of you who don't.
For those of you who
shift,
somehow
yeah.
missed the E for explicit rating on this podcast, there you go.
On
Make
that
sure you
note-
double check that. Don't let your kids listen.
Right.
I mean, you can, but you
Depends
might
on
have
if
to
you're a cool
explain.
mom or not, you know?
Yeah,
You might have to
you're gonna
explain
have
some
to-
things.
You're gonna have to
You see, when there is a very hot animation character, honey, little Timmy, just sometimes you just want to move his gear shift about and make him go faster. It's fine.
So we open up on Ord Mantell.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We open up on Ord Mantell. Wrecker and Omega are playing the strategy game. And I have a note here that looking at the board, like the way they're playing the game, Wrecker is doing surprisingly well at this game when Omega beats him. Like, I think he has like 2 pieces left to her 1 or something. Like, it's not like she's absolutely crushed him. So shout out to Wrecker for apparently being not awful at this strategy game.
I mean, I think that was also a big part of the season opener is Wrecker's actually really smart when it's something within his field. Like, he puts together a walking bomb and tells Hunter how to dismantle the tank so he can put together the tank and carry it. Like, Wrecker is a demolition engineer. Keyword engineer. Like, he's actually smart in certain things, and I think I've been really enjoying seeing those, like, peek through.
There was a great scene in like episode 7 of the first season or something, 7 or 8, I think. I think it's 8, episode 8 of the first season, where they're in Brock and he's teaching Omega how to disarm a bomb. And,
yeah.
Like, he's rattling off all these technical terms. It's like, oh no, Wrecker knows exactly what he's doing when it's a thing that Wrecker wants to learn about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the characterization all of Wrecker as just being completely dumb or, like, completely immature. He's very impulsive, but we also saw during his Order 66 moment, he's not stupid.
No.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's never been stupid, and I think that's been something that the fandom has given. And that's actually what I like about him and Tech in this episode is their strength is the other's weakness, and I find them that they balance well. So, like, Tech's taking care of, like, rebuilding Taya while, like, Wrecker's doing the heavy lifting, and at no point do they put down the other for their weakness because they are the other's strength.
I love that. It's almost like that's an overarching theme of the show or something. Tech mentions that Hunter and Echo, sir not appearing in this episodes, are off moving crates of Nerf nuggets.
Look, the Hunter Echo DoorDash AU is a godsend to fanfic writers. I don't want to hear it. Like, I need that AU written now.
And I need to relay a sort of stream of consciousness that I had in the Divas Discord while we were discussing this. Because somebody brought up, oh, are they just like chicken nuggets? And I'm like, well, generally speaking, nowadays, Tip Yip is chicken. Because every time you go to the parks, it's like Tip Yip is generally code for chicken at the docking bay, or Ronto seems to be like a kind of beef, like a hot dog type thing. I was like, what are Nerf nuggets? Well, Nerfs are like cows, right? They're like like cow
Right. He
type
says
things.
nerf herder.
So I
That's
was
what she
talking like,
calls him, yeah.
is it like beef nuggets? And I'm like, why would they be transporting like beef nuggets? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, you know what I wonder what a Nerf nugget is? I wonder if it's raw fertilizer. So now I have the mental image of Hunter and Echo being stuck on a ship with 50 crates of Nerf shit. And that is the funniest thing. And I can't get it out of my head.
Well, thankfully, Wikipedia says that it's a dish, not shit. So
Good.
Yeah, but it's really funny though.
I mean, it's hilarious,
It's
but
fucking hilarious.
it's disgusting as well.
Yay, my DoorDash AU still lives. Thank you, Bradley.
I had to say that was what I now perpetually imagine that is.
Yeah, because Wikipedia also says that Chewbacca has ordered Nerf nuggets before at a bar. So,
Yeah, Charles.
Are you really trying to out minutia my shit joke, Bradley? And by that I mean bad joke, but also joke about shit.
according to the audiobook,
Really?
Oh my god!
Really?
Oh my god! Do another
I'm
Charles.
actuallying you right now.
Do another Charles impression. Do another Charles impression.
Well, a Charles impression is just tech, but like even worse.
You gotta
because
go.
he just
You gotta go
references
higher and
Wikipedia
more
all the time.
nasally. Yeah,
Right.
you gotta go higher and more nasally with it. Like the divas have this down pat. Steph and Chris.
Yeah, they have a
where
very
you
good one.
kind of have to go sort of nasally with it. Well, in Darth Vader number 431, you kind of have to do that with it. Apparently, that's what I sound like. Okay.
You're the kind of guy I would have thrown out of my comic book store.
I'm the kind of guy who would
Yeah.
absolutely deserve to be thrown out of a comic book store.
I love it.
No,
But but just for the reason of being fucking insufferable. Imagine having to live with me.
I kid.
Do you have anything in the bar that we haven't covered that you specifically want to bring up? I know it's a short scene, but it's a good.
I do have something because I think
Okay.
it's very important to to Sid's story. She specifically mentions like, "Hey, stop playing that. You're going to run up the power bill," and I think that builds really well on what she was telling Hunter in the very first episode of the season. She is very aware that her operation is going to be coming to an end. Eventually, the Empire will come for them. And she is at this point where she is almost pinching pennies, where she is splitting the batch and sending them on different jobs because she's A, trying to get more money, and B, she's trying, like, that part of the reason I think she was at the racing thing, because she's trying to kind of spread her business and seeing what's work, because if she has to cut and go, then she'll at least have different outs. And if one of her outs is, hey, I have a very successful racer over here, I'm going to go over there. But the power bill line like really caught my ear because I think she's starting to get to a point where she is feeling the pressure of the Empire, and it will come. They're okay right now, but she is pinching pennies so hard right now. And it's really going to be playing up, I think, like setting up for like later down the season. And I'll touch back on this when we get to more Sid development. But I do think that's a very important scene because it's showing her fear and part of the reason why she's double working the batch, because she knows the end is coming and she's trying to get every little credit she can get.
That was just really good and complete, so I'm going to move on to Sapatoma. Sapatoma is new planet. We've never seen it anywhere before. Bad Batch has been doing this a lot, actually, I've noticed. 3, other than Ord Mantell, which doesn't really count, and Coruscant, which also doesn't really count. 2 of the 3 mission planets have been new planets. Desix, not D6, Desix, and Sapatoma are both new planets, while Sereno was obviously from the Clone Wars. So they head in here, and it's like this racing thing, and the minute they were like, oh, it's a racing thing, I was like, I know what the plot's gonna be. There's gonna be a high-stakes thing, something is gonna go wrong, one of them, probably tech based on the trailer, is gonna have to be in the racer, and they're gonna win the thing, and they're gonna get out of there. And I was completely right about this entire plot. So yay me. Now, I will use that to say, that does not mean this plot was bad. Tropes are not bad, and stories exist in the form they do for a reason. Just because I immediately clocked what the plot of the episode was going to be, doesn't mean the episode wasn't enjoyable. In fact, it was quite enjoyable. And honestly, it was kind of more enjoyable because I was like, okay, I can settle in and enjoy this episode because I basically know what's going to happen.
I was the same way because like I knew this was the tech racing episode, and I was just like, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. My boy's gonna drive. It's gonna be great. But actually, like Teo was the wild card for me, and I was just like, hi, Ben Schwartz. And also Malegi, like those two as well. Like those were the kind of like the wild cards of this episode. And you're right. Like I think tropes are really really great. Because it's not about not using a trope. It's how can you use a very well-known trope in a different way. And I think they did a really good job of finding different ways to using a very well-known tropes because this has a lot of similarities to the first episode of Resistance.
Yeah, 100%. This episode did really feel a lot like a love letter to Resistance, to be honest.
The whole bit with Tech's name when they were announcing it was very much like the Kaz from the first episode.
It's Resistance is a good show, I promise. Don't give me that look, Bradley.
I was told to bully you. He gave me $20 too.
Yeah. Mhm.
I saw the first season, maybe. I think some of it. I don't know. Honestly, I know Captain Phasma was in it, so that's why I watched it. That was about it. I mean, other than that, I don't remember a single thing from that show.
I was about to say, name one thing in Resistance that's not Phasma.
Oh wait, isn't Captain Cardinal in that?
No.
Oh wait, isn't
No,
that
That's
Red
Major
person?
Von Reg.
There is a red.
There's a
Resistance.
red one, but it's not the same red one.
Yeah.
It's not the same person.
If you want to believe he is, go ahead.
I was gonna say because the whole
Then
point
you're up for a
in the
very sad thing
audiobook
in the
is
finale.
that that's so annoying because Captain Cardinal in the Phasma book was special because he had the red armor.
Well, he's
Okay.
off being, oh, Christ. Is he off being, no. I don't want to spoil the books, but, he's not, around at this point.
Way to go not spoiling the book.
Wah, wah.
I'm not going to say in what context he's not around, but I do know that based on my knowledge of the duology, he is not presently doing First Order things at this point. Also, you should read Phasma and also Black Spire because both of them are very good books. And you can meet Vi Marati at the
I was
park.
gonna say
I've met her.
also Disney. That's the show you need to do next. Okay, just throwing that out there. The Phasma quote Vi Marati show is what you need to do next. If you want to start
where
doing new
is-
stuff in the new
Where
trilogy,
is my Vi Marati show?
that's
Vi
what you need.
Marati, she showed up at the end of one of the Halcyon comics, I think was her most recent appearance. Where the fuck is she? She hasn't been in anything other than that comic for a while. And it's like, you've got this POC and Ace character, which is fucking awesome. And she's a face character at the parks, and you're not using her anywhere for anything? Like, where is she?
I mean, do you trust these people to actually make an animated show that can make her skin tone right?
No, I do not. And
No,
2
just
notes
make her
from
live
now, we
action
will
then.
get into that.
Do you also trust these people after Tales of the Jedi and the erasure of Kaiden Larte to like do good, proper queer content?
Absolutely, I do not.
Yeah, so
Maybe not this creative team. Maybe we get a different creative team. Maybe we hire some women for that creative team. That's an
some
idea.
queers and some non-binary writers too.
That would be excellent.
Some trans writers, to actually make her mega trans and.
This is all wild speculation, of course. They would never ever do any of this.
No, to be honest, as much as I love Star Wars animation, I don't trust these showrunners as far as I could throw them, and I can't throw them very far. I'm very out of shape. They won't go far.
We'll get to that 2 notes from now. I want to compliment Sandwich them a little bit, though, before I get into that segment, and just parrot a tweet that I think you made, Hope. And I want to talk about this crowd animation.
Oh, I did write that. I was like, where did I do that? Yes, I did. It looks so good.
Where you made the very correct point on Twitter that in the Clone Wars days, they would have had 2 models. They would have had human man and human woman.
I will never forget watching Star Wars Rebels for the first time. It was the first episode after Minister Tua died, and somebody has her model in the background with different hair color. And I was very confused because I thought she was just like she lived and she was living an undercover life on Lethal because it's her exact same face, skin tone, and hair shape, just a different hair color. And I was so confused and I was looking for her. So yeah, the crowds of I think that's one thing that's done really well. And like once I look back at the pictures, there's a few like similarities between them. And like one is their "This is our Mando man" face man that they used on Mandalore. But yeah, it's the technology.
Also, Coruscant, bizarrely, that human male model shows up on Coruscant. It's really weird. Yeah, I'm looking at the initial crowd shot, and at least in the crowd that the main characters are in, every single character is a unique model, which is probably the reason it got delayed a year, because it's really quite impressive that they managed to do this.
I'm starting to think more and more that maybe it got delayed because they wanted both Andor and Tales of the Jedi to come out first, because this season has been singing very well with those two shows. Like, if Andor is the main course and Tales of the Jedi was the amuse-bouche, this is like the fine wine paired with both of them, because it's really building on the very good Separatist Dooku stuff that from that, and like it's playing with a lot of the themes in the changing empire of Andor, and so it's really reminding me so much of those, and it just pairs so well. So I'm starting to think that maybe the delay was purposeful because they wanted those two shows to come out first.
The show's fine, but it's coming at the end of being so full of good Star Wars that I'm like, I'm just vibing with this. It's the comfort food before you go to bed. So it is time now for the segment of every episode, which I am still workshopping a title for, but is tentatively called Whose Goddamn White Baby Is That? Where I tell you my observation watching The Bad Batch in the dark on my high-def TV in the living room, which is about as good a picture quality as you can get without going to the theater to watch it, how white the clones are. Disclaimer, I am a white person. That is also important to keep in mind. It depended on this episode on the shot. It depended on the lighting, and it depended on who was in frame. So there was the reason I put it here is because the first time I noticed it, there's some shots where Omega and Wrecker and Sid are together and Tech kind of has his face covered. Those shots, I was like, damn, Omega looks significantly whiter than Wrecker. Which, one of the points that has been raised by POC people who have been commenting on this issue has been the fact that Wrecker being the darkest out of all of them, like noticeably the darkest, while also being the most impulsive and characterized as sometimes the most aggressive, is also really bad. But in this shot of Omega and Sid and Wrecker, Omega is noticeably lighter than Wrecker is. Now later on, there's a shot where they're in the pit, like they're down in the pit crew, and it's Omega, Wrecker, and Tech. And Omega and Wrecker actually kind of look like the same skin tone. They both look kind of darker. Tech looks noticeably whiter than the two of them. So in this episode, it just sort of depended on what the lighting of the scene was, which is not great. Some shots, they got the skin tones closer. I'm not going to say they've got it yet. And then sometimes I'm like, that's a white person. This is badly lit, and that's a white person. So that concludes my analysis on how badly did they fuck up the whitewashing. The answer is not quite as badly as last week with Crosshair, but still pretty bad.
This is the episode that's also in the most sunlight, because in the first episode, they were wearing the helmets during a lot of the daytime shots, and because I write reviews and stuff, I'm always looking for screenshots, and it's very hard to get pictures of their faces in the light, because they're always on like the Marauder, or it's a nighttime shot, or it's like, or they're like in back alleys or something like that. So there's a lot of shadows to really hide their skin tone. And this was the first time where it's like, here's three of them faces out in the sun. It's definitely very noticeable.
Absolutely, yeah. And there was a shot on like the beach in the first episode where Omega looked better. I noted this in our first episode where it's that beach lighting, it's that flat beach lighting, and she looks better than she did last season. But it does seem to continue to be a case-by-case basis. And again, as I mentioned last week, I am specifically pointing out the skin tones because that is the thing the creators said they went back and adjusted.
You know what I would like, and I feel this way about Tales of the Jedi and the whole Caden Larte thing. Caden, what's Larte? I can't talk tonight. Thing is, I just want an honest to God statement of, hey, we fucked up. We hear you. And like, because I understand how hard animation is to change. They were for context. If you want to know how far in development these are usually in, they were working on the first up season of Resistance and season 2 of Rebels. So like it's really hard to go back. But first and foremost, it starts in the design phase. And if you look at concept art of the Bad Batch season 1, it's in the design phase. Like their skin tones are to be this white and this light. So it starts there, and that was the mistake from the get-go. I wish that like Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao, and he is the executive producer, even though he's not the showrunner or writer or any of that. Dave Filoni. Like, I want them to actually have a statement of like, hey, we hear you. We understand that we fucked up. We are working on this, and not having to be pressured by an interviewer for Collider to bring it up, like take the initiative of just like, we are doing this. We understand that the pain this has caused, because like they did it, like, like that would go a long way for me personally. Like, and when I say me personally, I'm talking about the Tales of the Jedi mishap. I am also a white person. I can't speak for anybody here. But like, I know when it came to the Tales of the Jedi stuff, like if they actually just came out and was like, hey, we fucked up, that would have made me feel a lot better about that scenario. Because at least that we would know as fans that they're taking accountability and they're hearing it, and we can continue to hold them accountable. Statements go a long way.
That concludes our section on how goddamn white these people are. That I feel obligated to bring up every week in perpetuity until it is fixed. It's because I don't want to give this show praise without mentioning that at every single opportunity. Also, shout out to Hope. The screenshots that she takes that she's mentioning are excellent, and oftentimes will pop up in the Google results for episodes when I make our TikToks with the screenshots in the background.
That's on purpose, because your bitch knows how to work a Google Analytics.
Well, those screenshots have made it into the background of some of our TikToks.
I know SEO and how to manipulate photos for algorithm reasons.
People should hire Hope to do their SEO and pay her money.
Yes, please.
We are introduced to a new droid character, Teo, being voiced by Ben Schwartz. Schwartz.
Can I introduce him?
Please go ahead and introduce Ben Schwartz.
So I have an incredibly boring superpower that I can somehow always find Ben Schwartz in an animated series. And this completes his animation, Four Horsemen of the Blue Apocalypse. Because Ben Schwartz is now Teo, who's a blue droid. He was Dewey Duck in the reboot of DuckTales, which he has the exact same... He actually says, just like Teo, I regret nothing, multiple times after doing stupid things. He is also Leo in Rise of the TMNT, because of course he had to be a Ninja Turtle, and the blue one at that. And he's the voice of live action Sonic the Hedgehog in the 2 movies, which are so good, and that's probably one of Jim Carrey's best roles, and his Renaissance callback to his 90 days.
So we have what's called a Disney trifecta, which is you have to appear in a Star Wars thing, a Marvel thing, and a mainline Disney thing. So because he's the voice of Lou Tarleton in MODOK is the one that I see. He may be in something else, but I don't know. That is technically a Marvel thing, I believe. That is technically a Marvel thing.
Yep, it is.
So between that and DuckTales and Star Wars. However, Teo did not complete his Disney trifecta because, in addition to being on Parks and Rec, where most people are going to know him from, Ben Schwartz was a voice consultant for the voice of BB-8 in Star Wars The Force Awakens. So he's actually been tangentially related to a Star Wars before.
He was also an uncredited as a stormtrooper in The Force Awakens as well.
So all he needs to do is be in a Star Wars TV show live action, and he'll have what we call a Star Wars trifecta, which is where you appear in a Star Wars movie, a Star Wars TV show, and a Star Wars cartoon. So he's close. He's almost there. He just needs to appear in a TV show.
Andy Serkis is almost there too. He just needs the animated.
We do have 2 people, I believe, no, 3 people who have that distinction. I believe it is Ming-Na Wen. No, not Ming-Na Wen. She doesn't have that yet.
She wasn't in a Star Wars live action movie. Yeah, she wasn't in a movie.
She wasn't in a movie. It's Genevieve O'Reilly and Forrest Whitaker.
Genevieve Does it have to be a live action movie or just a movie?
Well, that's the 2 people who have played the same character.
because I propose Matt Lanter because he was in the Clone Wars movie, which is a theatrical release, so it's a movie. He was Anakin, and then he was in The Mandalorian.
We consider live action movie to be the criteria for.
No, I will fight you over. No,
and you have to play the same character too.
No,
so
this
that's
is
kind
my
of
hill.
like the double.
This is my hill I die on. Is that Clone Wars is a theatrical release Skywalker film, must be included in people's rankings. This is my Star Wars hill I will always die on. I will where do you live? I'll come step you.
Well, close to you. I can give you his address.
No. I don't want to scare Bradley that much.
I do!
But there was a time where I thought you were made up, and I can make that happen.
I'm just going to keep blasting through here. So we get also introduced later on in the same scene to, I'm skipping over some Tech and Teo banter. It's very cute.
It's super cute.
It's super cute, super fun. We are introduced to another new character, Malegi. Would you like to know who is voicing Malegi?
I know, but I wrote about it.
Malegi is being voiced by Ernie Hudson. Ernie Hudson, you probably know as Winston Zedmore from Ghostbusters, but he also has 251 acting credits. This is his first appearance on a Star Wars thing, but just scrolling through the IMDb.
I know him from Miscongeniality. Those movies. He plays the FBI director in those movies, and so those are my favorite movies ever. Yeah, so those I literally Miscongeniality is like my deserted island like choice for like movies. Like if I had to pick like 3 movies or whatever, like Miscongeniality and Miscongeniality 2 are like 2 of my movies.
That makes so much sense for what I know about you as a person. He's just been in too much stuff. There's so much.
I mean, I knew I recognized his voice when I was watching the episode because I was like, I've heard him. Like, I know who that is. Like, I had to look it up afterwards to figure out who he was. And I was like, oh, I've seen him in like probably a million things.
Yeah, if you've seen an episodic TV show, you've seen Ernie Hudson in an episode of that TV show. He's been in so many things. It's insane. Also, beautiful voice.
Yeah, like he is so good in this role. Like he gives it this like nuance and depth that makes it more than just like a baddie of the week. Like it's like listening to Velvet, and he plays one of those characters like where he's talking and you're like, I want to listen to you more, and it's a trap because his character will stab you.
I would like his character to stab me. I would like his character in a context with some depth.
He can wreck me.
Specifically some depth inside of me. Wow, I am really just going on. This is a thirsty episode. It's Hope is here bringing this out of me.
I mean,
that's the thing.
He has a big mouth. If he wants to like trim up my lady garden, it's fine. I don't need my lady garden anymore.
Oh my god! Not the pink milk reference.
I will always love him.
Lady garden.
I will always love him for that. Like, look, Maleki is great. Like, he's a very great design character. I love like Down twins. I think that's what it's called.
I love those aliens are so cool.
Dalatin, I think is how you pronounce it.
That's such a great design. His voice is great. He has depth, and his face is absolutely sittable. It's great.
We haven't really seen a lot of them. There was, they were in The Force Awakens. There was that one in The Force Awakens. The biggest Dalatin character we've really gotten thus far is Panada from the High Republic.
Oh, I would have argued the Ninth Sister.
Oh, right. Ninth Sister was a Dalatin.
Yeah, I would argue her.
I forgot about this because...
Oh, that's from the Fallen Order games?
Yeah, from the Fallen Order game, because she's mostly covered by armor. I was like, that is a Dalatin.
Let's bring that character back, because that's cool.
I love her in the Vader comics. Yeah, like, she can wreck me, too. It's fine.
Anyway, Malegi, call me.
Yeah, we like you.
Just for Lucasfilm. Oh, B2... Actually, hold on. He's the protocol droid from the Twins. in the English dub.
Oh, okay.
Which I've not seen because I watched it in Japanese because my boyfriend is super picky like that.
The dub is really good.
I've heard the dub is really good. One of these days I will get around to watching it.
You should at least watch The Village Bride because Christopher Sean is really good in that, and it's always great to hear him back in Star Wars because I need more Kaz.
Speaking of Christopher Sean, what John Lapau has done a lot of voice work for is Resistance. He is a lot of voices in Resistance. Lot of them. He's
kind of like their go-to if they need like a small bit part character because he's also done like a lot of like Rebels and Clone Wars too. Like he's
it seems like the dream of working for Lucasfilm.
I don't see any Rebels or Clone Wars on his Wikipedia page. Let me see if it appears in IMDb.
I could be wrong. It's fine.
It's not appear. It looks like he mainly was just in Resistance, but he was Resistance's like go-to male voice actor. Like so he's Stormtrooper number 2, Stormtrooper number 3, Stormtrooper number 4, Pirate number 2, Fuel Tanker Captain, AI, Gork. Sorry. He's the voice of the Aosians. He's the voice of Hallian Nark, the Nemoidian spy. He's also the voice of Glitch in Resistance. So he's just a lot of voices in Resistance. Get a little voice cameo here as an announcer.
I love that scene when the guy gets shot. I can't believe they put that in there.
He is also the voice of Jet Venom in this episode as well. I believe Jet Venom is...
I think he's one of the racers.
This is the thing Charles should have researched. Jet
Venom. He's like the main racer, the one that is, I guess.
He's also the voice of Jet Venom.
Whatever. Yeah.
In this. So that's who that is. I thought that was a fun little cameo. I was a little confused about the Venom Crunch, though, and the way it worked. Because I was like, okay, so they have one racer come up behind Teo and, like, clamp him in place. And then the other one, like sabotages him from the front. Here's my question. Does Maleki have 2 racers on this course?
Yes,
absolutely.
It's like the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. It's the slingshot, and they gotta do the shake and bake. And they're on the same team. So he's paying off both racers. That's what it reminded me of.
They're secretly working together or whatever.
They are. He's paying both racers. Because, it's like Ricky Bobby. Can't believe I pulled that movie out of nowhere.
Look, it seems like an appropriate movie to bring up.
The Ballad of Jet Venom.
Shake and bake. And Record's like, if you're not first, you're last, Tech.
Okay. So Teo loses because, plot has to happen. And this was a point where I was a little bit confused about how the wager worked. Because it's basically like there's a side wager and the Maleki comes up and's like, give me the money. And so it's like, obviously I don't have the money on me. I'm not carrying a briefcase around. And Maleki's like, nope, you're going to hand over. Like, is he going to do like an electronic funds transfer? Like, I was a little confused on that, but I guess maybe he wanted her to like call her bank and wire the money over. I don't know. I was a little confused on that.
He was going to take it out of her flesh. That's all.
Wow. Okay. That's
the whole thing where Omega was just like, they're gonna hurt Sid. And I think because if Sid would have won, she would have had the money to be able to pay him for whatever. Or like, actually, if Sid would have won, she wouldn't have to pay him at all. So she was betting on the wins, and she was essentially like writing blank checks with money she didn't have. And because she lost, they were gonna hurt her because he knew she didn't have the money. She knew she didn't have money, and Omega was the one that was just like, ah.
Yeah, she kind of made it sound like she had the money, but it wasn't with her, but she was like good for it. I wish maybe some minor tweaks to the script to make it a little clear that she doesn't actually have the money to be paying him off.
I mean, if she's yelling at them about power bills.
That is true. That is true. That is an excellent point that I did not notice until Hope pointed it out. I just assumed that was Sid being stingy, as usual. It's an excellent. Thank you, Hope, for changing my perception of this episode.
You're welcome. It seems like those slightly off point that I really like a lot of the visual storytelling in this of like what's not being said. Like there's a moment like where in this scene where Wrecker and Tech like are both like getting ready to protect Sid because she asked them. But there's also a scene earlier when Maleki first walks in. Wrecker doesn't say anything, but the shot goes to Wrecker and he immediately tenses and takes a step forward. And when Maleki approaches Omega, both Tech and Wrecker come up, and like Jack kind of tilts his head, just like, oh, if you fuck around, you will find out with this child. Like, there's a lot of little visuals with Tech and Wrecker where they're not saying anything, and that's what I've always liked about Tech is he doesn't always say the right things. He's not the most amicable person that always says the nice or the right things, but he's a character of action, and his actions say what he's truly feels. And we of course saw that in the first episode. I always think back to the season finale when Crosshair and Omega, like Kamino is sinking and they're on the other side of the door. Tech, the weakest of, probably physically weakest of all of them, is trying to pull open the door with his bare fucking hands. And this is a latched, like a locked door, and he's pulling at it with his bare hands. And that's the kind of character he is. And there's a lot of little moments like this with Wrecker and Tech in this episode where they don't say anything, but they have a lot of visual storytelling of like stepping up to protect Omega, stepping up to protect Sid. And they're not saying anything, but it's all in their visual storytelling.
Speaking of Omega and Sid, I want to bring up this moment where Omega is basically like, we'll double or nothing at, kind of as this Hail Mary throw to save Sid, because it is it's very much a Sid thing to do. To be like, oh no, we'll double or nothing it to buy time. Like, she didn't learn that from anybody in the batch. That's a Sid thing that she picked up. But also the fact that she's willing to do that she's willing to, continue to throw themselves on the line to protect Sid, I think is something that is going to be super important to the rest of this season going forward. Because they're really setting up, especially if there's a conversation later in this episode, whether or not Sid is going to be as loyal to the batch as the batch is loyal to her. And I think it's specifically Omega that's loyal to Sid, because both Wrecker and Tech are both like, maybe we don't do this. And Omega's like, no, we're gonna get Sid back. Shut up. I'm actually in charge here.
Then can we go ahead and talk about that? Like, that Malegi Sid scene, because I agree. Like, and this is the exact reason why I do not think this episode is filler at all. Because Sid has always had a soft spot for Omega. Like, she's the one that was helping Echo train her in the energy bow. She's the one that took Omega under her wing. And it is okay if we jump to that point.
It is. I have no notes on the scene. Tech rebuilds Teo, and it's funny, and there's some conversation on whether or not they should have helped Sid.
The only thing I have about that is I love Benchworth going, where are my arms and legs?
Yes, we can jump ahead to because it's the next scene right after that is Sid and Malegi having their conversation.
That is the exact reason why I do not think this episode is filler at all. Because we have been building, again, like from the first episode, like this is coming. The Empire will come for them. And starting from season 1, like they've been slowly worming their way into Sid's heart. And I don't think she's used to having people who are loyal to her. And it's heavily insinuated with Maleki that Sid usually like cuts and runs from people. Like, because he warns the batch multiple times of like, you better watch out for her. She's gonna backstab you. And it's been building up to this point to where at some point in the season, she's going to have to make a choice where it's them or her. And my sad tinfoil hat theory is I think she's going to give her life for them. I don't think Sid's making it out this season. But we need episodes like this where it's building her character that if she does make the ultimate sacrifice, it builds the emotional resonance of her demise. And that's why these kind of scenes are important. But I do think it's going to lead to a place where she's going to make the right choice and give them a chance to get away, and she's going to take the fall for them. But it wouldn't work if we didn't have episodes like this, and that's why I do not think this is filler in any way, shape, or form.
I also think it's, to an extent, the Hitchcockian bomb under the table. It's sort of a bit of drama that's underlying the season as a whole, and hopefully it will pay off. I'm not 100% confident about that, because they didn't pay off shit last season.
They said that, I seem to recall that somebody said in an interview that something from every episode is going to come back.
Okay. Well, it's kind of that bit of dramatic drama underneath these episodes to kind of set up, because it was mentioned kind of back in the first episode too, that, Sid was feeling the crunch and feeling the pressure, and potentially, the old Sid, the quote-unquote real Sid, would hang the batch out to dry. And certainly season 1 Sid would have done that. I don't know if season 2 Sid will, but the question of whether or not Sid will is something that's going to underline the rest of probably this season for us. So I think it's interesting because, I'll talk in a minute about where I feel like Tech was good but not quite as strong as he needed to be in this episode. Sid is absolutely the central dramatic force of this episode. She gets all of the interesting character moments that really reveal something new about her character. The Tech stuff is fun, and it's fun to be with Tech and see Tech in a situation and discovering something new about himself. But Sid scenes are the real dramatic one, which is why it's interesting that we've gotten a kind of a Sid-focused episode, but not really a Sid-focused. This is what I wanted from Infested, by the way. This exact type of story is what I wanted.
Yeah, just sprinkle in little bits of that, like what her character is.
I still stand by that. Infested would have worked at the beginning of the season because it would have been their kind of first adventure with Sid, and instead it would start the whole thing of if Infested was at the beginning of the season, that would be their first outing with her, then it would be her entryway of going okay, these guys kind of help me, they're not as bad. I still stand by Infested should have been at the beginning of the season.
I do not disagree with that, and in fact my feedback on Hope's coverage can actually be heard on a later episode of Jaig, where I talk at length as to why I think that episode was later on in the season. Is a little plug for Jaig and Jedi there.
Thank you.
So Teo's back, ready to go. They're getting all good. I do like how Tech is pretty much just right the entire episode about everything, which I do find immensely funny because everything Tech points out in the first half of the episode comes up again in the race that Tech is in. It's that lovely, sexy setup and payoff. A bunch of things are mentioned and then they pay off. It's great. It's good writing.
And I like the whole thing that Teo wants to be super hyper aggressive, and that's being hyper aggressive is not always the answer, and that's exactly what Tech does. Defense is the best way. Defense and speed, he doesn't need to be hyper aggressive and harm anybody around him, which I think is interesting coming from a soldier whose entire life has been how do we harm these battle droids to get them out of their way to save people. And so coming from a life of a soldier, finding a very peaceful, non-lethal way to I don't need to blast my enemies, I just need to outsmart them. And I thought that was a very poignant and nuanced kind of take on this, especially coming from him, who's almost being more analytical than the very personable droid in the episode.
It's also kind of a flip side of the coin to feel, don't think, use your instincts. There's parts of this that reference the pod race and one big one that we'll get to. But this almost kind of mirrors it in a way to where that wouldn't work for Tech. That works for Anakin, but it wouldn't work for Tech. Tech doesn't have the Force, but what Tech has is his analytical skills. So in Tech's case, thinking actually is going to be the thing that gets him through it, which I did think was a lovely little mirror to the pod race. My literal next note is LMAO by Teo.
And then his Dewey Duck line of I regret nothing. I love it. I know that Teo's probably going to be a very polarizing character. People are either going to really like him or really hate him. I'm actually pleased to see that I've seen most people being yeah, we love him. But he just feels like a Star Wars Resistance character. If he just walked onto the Colossus, I think he would just fit right in. Nobody would question it. He just would be a racer on the Colossus, and he would fit so much into that show. And Teo's just a fun character. God forbid Star Wars is fun for 24 fucking minutes.
I really liked him, but then I have a, shall we say, tolerance built up to annoying fucking twinks at this point. I see Bradley narrowing his eyes in the Zoom call.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were talking about Chris or Bradley.
Chris is not a twink.
I'm a bad gay, don't judge me. I don't know what these
Chris
mean.
is not a twink.
I've never met Chris. I've only seen his pictures, so I only see him from the shoulders,
okay,
on a Zoom call.
Well, I'm informing you now, Chris is not a twink.
Is Chris listening?
Probably.
Chris, I'm sorry. I don't know. Stop. I'm a bad gay. Leave me alone.
For starters, Chris has brain cells. That's your first clue.
Oh my god, really? If it makes you feel any better, I'm the chat moderator for Pink Milk, and I had to have them explain to me what a kiki was, because I had no fucking clue. Bradley's
grief.
closing his eyes and judging me, everyone. It's fine. I'm a bad gay. Don't judge me.
I think we need to start a new podcast where we just explain terms in the
Please
community.
do. Oh my god, please do. That'd be so fucking
We
helpful for me.
explain gay things.
It's
I've
gay
had
Urban
people.
Dictionary. Like,
Because like somebody made a joke once about like tapping their foot under the bathroom stall, and I was like, why? I didn't know what it meant.
if we weren't an explicit podcast to begin with,
I
we would be demonetized for that
I
statement.
was too
right
embarrassed.
there.
I had to Google it. I didn't know.
I'm
Shout out.
dead.
This is
Shout out to our sponsor, Anchor, for continuing to let us run their ads on our show.
Right. I was gonna say we
Despite
need a
us
new
saying
sponsor.
this
Our
shit.
new sponsor is Sniffy's app on
Shout out to our new sponsor, Grinder Extra.
I just want to say, like, this is what life, at least for me, I don't want to say that this is for everybody, but this is my asexual life where I'm like, I don't need to think about what it means to tap your foot under a bathroom stall. I'm too busy thinking about cartoons.
That's very
You're
fair.
a very lucky person in that regard, to be honest.
I could be thinking about Anne Rice vampires. Like, why do I need to think about this?
Because let me tell you, kids, with your Grinder and your Tinder, that there was a time before that, and it was significantly harder. Y'all don't know how easy you have it. Listen to me talking like I'm fucking ancient. If Chris wasn't screaming before, he probably is now.
Chris, I'm so sorry I called you a twink. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Please, please don't kick
it's
me off
okay.
for light and dice.
It's okay. I have told you, I have met Chris in person. He is not a twink.
That's true. I've only seen him on Zoom calls, so.
Yeah, you only really seen him from the shoulders up.
But isn't that a compliment though? Because
You might take it as a compliment that he looks really young.
Yeah, I was about to say,
he
isn't
looks
it a
great.
compliment?
He looks great. His skin, I need his skincare routine because that is the nicest thing I will ever say about
I was about
Chris
to
on
say,
this
you're
show.
complimenting Chris. What's happening? Like, am I in the like? Where am I?
It happened. That was it for the month. Well, they got a second one because they just got their 100th episode, so I wrote them a very nice message in the Discord in one of the threads about how much I appreciate the show.
Oh, gross.
I know, it's horrifying. Back to our show. So Teo gets wiped out, and then Malegi just shows up, which I found really funny because, like, Malegi's just there, like, waiting in the shadows with Sid.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be
He's
suspicious.
suspicious. Like, just hanging out. I want to talk about text choice to race. And this is where
Yes.
this is where I felt the ball was kind of dropped, and maybe Hope can give a different perspective, because I felt like what the episode was going for, and it did it adequately enough, was that Tech does not think that they should be sticking their necks out for Sid. And when the opportunity comes up that Teo has been taken out, Sid is going to basically be held hostage by Malegi. And also Tech just kind of wants to do it. Tech steps up and decides to do it. But that didn't feel like quite strong enough of a moment for me to convey that. Hope, what was your thoughts on this?
I will agree that the execution could have been better, but the reason that scene works for me is the conversation that he had with Taya beforehand about talking about why it's so interesting to him and how he genuinely enjoyed looking at everything and like analyzing it, and it was fascinating to him because I do think Ruins of War was a much stronger Tech episode. I would definitely agree with that, but like I was saying earlier, I really like this idea of him finding interests outside of being a soldier and a mercenary. And I do think he's doing a little bit of it for Omega because she's the one that's the most adamant about all this. But I do think he honestly wants to. And because of the scene from earlier that he is developing this interest in this new side of his personality, and I think he honestly wants to try it. And I actually love the reaction from Wrecker because like Wrecker first laughs and then looks at him and like it shows how well Wrecker knows him, where Wrecker laughs it off and then looks at him and goes, oh my god, he's not joking. Like he can tell that from the look on Tech's face because he knows his brother that well. And to go back to like I think Crosshair last week, Crosshair to me, the reason he doesn't leave is because he doesn't know who he is outside of his ability. And there's I'm about to paraphrase this just so you know. One of my favorite YouTube channels is Cinema Therapy, where it's a therapist and a movie director and they go through movies and the therapist talks about the therapy of the movies and the director talks about the director of the movies. They have this one line that they say a lot, which is people don't change until the pain of staying staying the same finally outweighs the difficulty of changing. And I think that's where Crosshair is that the pain of staying the same of where he is hasn't outweighed how hard it would be for him to face, I don't know who I am outside of my abilities. Because all the batch members, all the other batch members, I should say, their abilities can go towards helping people in different ways. Like Hunter can track things, Wrecker's strong, Tech is smart, Echo is just well-rounded because he was a reg. But Crosshair's ability is killing. That is his thing. And who is he outside of that if he can't be a sniper? And I don't think he's ready to delve into that side of himself, which is why I really love Tech in this episode, is a few times more in Ruins of War, where he's starting to see the world outside of himself and starting to to have that major paradigm shift of, I don't know everything. I just assumed that this was a separatist data disk or whatever, but it's Serenian, and I need to change my paradigm. And that's where he is here. Like, he could have just been like, oh, we're just doing this mission, but his paradigm is shifting to, I'm actually really enjoying this. I really am happy to be here. Like, I'm having a good time. And so when he is presented with this opportunity of, I can do this thing and give it a try and see if I like it. And that's, and I'm going to circle back to this at the end after the race, but I agree that it could have been executed stronger. Like, I would almost like him to be a little bit more adamant about it, or like have just like a little bit of excitement of just like, oh my God, I'm doing this. But I do think it works because of the previous scene of setting up that this is his interest and he wants to try it for his honest to good self, and saving Sid is a plus for Omega.
Or even just a moment of hesitation, like that's more clear beforehand, because I think he hesitates a little bit and then says he'll do it. Just something extra. But yeah, I do think Tech is interesting to compare and contrast with Crosshair in the last episode. I think it was a good choice to put these two episodes next to each other, especially coming off the back of the first two, which I didn't think were that interesting when I watched them, but in hindsight, they're doing some interesting things with the themes that are emerging of this season, which, again, I know a lot of people in our sphere of things have seen the first 14 episodes. We have not. That is partly my fault. Okay, so the racer introduction scene.
It's great. Is that the droid from the Phantom Menace who just like, I feel like that droid who got C-3PO's head stuck on his body was just, or got his head stuck on C-3PO's body was just like, I really love that life. And like, he was just like, I'm gonna go and find me a protocol droid and put my head on it, and I'm just gonna live my best Phantom Menace life.
Well, there's also just a whole ass protocol droid. Like, I had the scene kind of playing a little bit just to double check. And yeah, that's a whole ass protocol droid as well in the thing.
I was so sad because I thought the red one was Mr. Bones. I was so sad.
We're a little early. We're a little early for my boy, Mr. Bones.
I saw Red Droid and I was like, Miss Bones!
Although Mr. Bones does appear in LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Not even as DLC. You can just get him in the base game, which kicks ass.
I love playing as him.
Also, I'm looking at the red one, the BX series droid, the assassin droid or whatever, and his name is he's got like some name, but then he's also known as the War Gnome.
What?
I love all their names.
Does that make any sense to you guys? Like, what the hell does that mean? That
I feel like somebody like they were just like throwing up like names. They're like, sure, that works.
Well, so this is a double bit. This is a rare double bit. They're doing two jokes here. Bradley, have you watched The Phantom Menace on Disney Plus specifically?
Is it the like extended version?
It's the extended version. Do you know what they added into the extended version of The Phantom Menace?
12 more minutes of pod racing.
Do you know what one of those things they added to the pod racing was?
Is it a backstory of that guy who's
I don't know.
He's racing for his family.
Neither of you know. Okay, so I have watched The Phantom Menace on Disney Plus, and one of the things that they added, because I do not remember this being in the movie when I was a kid, but they added an extended sequence where they go through every single pod racer and they list them all off. They go through every single one, and this is a reference to that.
That I was about to say, because I thought that scene was really funny. I was like, this is really long. This is a lot of racers.
It's really long. It's not in the original movie. I am 100%.
Yeah, because in the original one, like, there's literally like 12 racers. Like, you can't list every single one. It would take forever.
Go through every single one in the version that's on Disney Plus.
Right. I like how they simplified it a little bit, because they were like, here's Sebulba and here's Anakin. That's all you really need to know, because
that's what they did in the theatrical cut of the film. But when they re-released it in 3D, 3, I believe, was when they added this sequence in. This is a reference to that. Also, the punchline of Tech is really fucking funny.
It was such a episode 1. Kaz, Ziono. All right, Kaz, Ziono.
My next note literally is, though, that this is very Resistance. Also kind of Knights of the Old Republic in a bit with the swoop racing, but more Resistance.
Resistance meet Mario Kart.
Yeah. This is very, what is it, Vox Vortex 5000?
Mm-hmm.
Very the race from the opening scene. And Bradley wouldn't even remember Vox Vortex because he never watched season 2. If Star Wars ever gives us an extended break again, we will go through Resistance. But they have to give us an extended break.
I was gonna say, because
totally
that's like 20-ish, 24 episodes-ish, so it's like, yikes. Like, they better give us a long time.
Well, so I've been taking my boyfriend through Star Wars, and we have now watched all of the Clone Wars. We've watched The Bad Batch, Andor, Rebels. We have watched all of the films. The only thing that we haven't watched yet is Resistance. And he's a little confused, I feel like, because I think he's like, why are we watching Resistance? Why are you insistent on watching? He doesn't know yet. So it's going to be really interesting to take him through Resistance as well, because he's never seen it. So that's going to be a fun one. I just love showing people Resistance and making them sit through the whole thing, because it's not what you think it is. I'm fond of saying the first season of Resistance and Star Wars Andor have exactly the same themes.
Yes, they do. And everything that people love about Andor is all those things they shit on about Resistance. And I'm just like, no, stop it.
No, it's doing the same themes. Resistance did specifically the rise of fascism and how it takes over a community as well. It's the same theme. You have to watch the show. You have to get past episode 5.
I think everybody gets so caught up with the slapstick, which I welcome fully, because when you have scenes of aliens being put on like shipping containers to be shipped off to camps, you know, like horrible things that has happened in our history, I'd like to watch Kaz fall down the stairs to, you know, break up that tenseness, please.
It is also extremely funny to watch Kaz fall down the stairs.
Yes, somebody does super cut of just him screaming. It was great.
Watching Kazuto Ziono get shit on is just one of my favorite things about that show, because he's so inept.
And I think people miss how dark it gets. Like, there's a scene where he stuns Pyre in season 2, and he looks at his blaster and goes, "Oh, it was set to stun," because he wanted to fucking murder that man for blowing up his goddamn planet.
Well, spoilers for Resistance. Good news, Kaz, about what you're ultimately going to get to do.
Anyway.
Indirectly.
Let's get to the hot race.
Okay, so, yeah.
My only note is it's really hot. I really love it. The visuals are great. The Kiner's music is so good. Like, taking Kiner's music from last week, which was very like Clone Wars at times, but it also had a lot
literally
of
the clone theme plays at one point. We pointed this out to Colton.
Yeah,
literally the clone theme plays.
It's heavy and it's somber and it's a much slower pace. And then you get to like the race scene in this, and it's very synthesized. It's upbeat. It feels like it reminds me actually kind of a little bit of, to show my weeaboo-ness, a little bit of Hazardous Highway from Kingdom Hearts 2, which is probably one of my favorite Kingdom Hearts pieces of music. I cannot drive to that because I have gotten into a fender bender listening to that song, but like it just feels like a video game theme of just like dun 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 dun, and it's fast paced, and it shows Kiner's range from like the somber tones of last week to like the more upbeat synthesized, like it's gonna be energetic, and I cannot wait for this soundtrack to drop, because I really loved the music in this scene.
Yes, I love having soundtracks for things.
Yes, season 3, 4 of Rebels and all
season
of
3 or 4 of Rebels and all of Resistance.
Yeah, but
where's my
Michael,
official soundtracks for those?
That's Michael Tavera who did the soundtrack of Resistance, so that's a little bit harder because it's a different composer.
The Kiners did Rebels, I'm pretty sure.
Kiner did do Rebels.
I think that both Kiners did Clone Wars, and I think both Kiners did Rebels, but I think only Kevin is doing Bad Batch.
Yeah. But the entire scene was hot when like Tech was just like, I need to drop this weight, and like throws off his parts. I was just like, you could throw off more, Tech.
He throws off specifically the weapons.
Yeah.
He takes off the weapons, which is very Star Wars.
He could have also taken off his pants so I could see his weapon. You could have thrown that off and saved some weight as well. Throw off the shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. Can I tell you the present that my friend from the Geeky Waffle got me?
What did your friend from the Geeky Waffle get you?
So Candace, who is my friend slash sort of boss, but more like we're like co-workers, she got me artwork of Tech shirtless with his pants just pulled down enough to see a happy trail. And I'm like, I love you, Candace. You know me so well. Thank you for Christmas. Yay, Christmas.
Bradley is trying desperately to hold it together in the zip. Bradley is closing his laptop. He is done. He is done with
I've
this
left
episode.
the conversation. I'm just kidding. No, that's hilarious.
She was like, I know what you like. And I'm like, yes, you do. Thank you. And she's like, that's your bonus. And I was like, yay, I love working for this channel.
I like that Tech dropped the weapons. I thought it was very Star Wars. And the race was very good. It was very well directed. The music was excellent. I have no
it's
notes am I
great.
going to do on this race other than
it's fun. Good. Let Star Wars be fun. It's fun.
Let Star Wars be fun. Star Wars should be fun more often.
Yes. When there's a franchise with wars in the title, it's okay if it's fun every once in a while.
Where we can have the Umbara arc of Clone Wars, but we can also have the droid arc sometime. By that I mean the C-3PO and R2-D2 duology in season 2, where they have the little Gulliver's Travels adventures, which are episodes that are
love those
interesting
episodes.
and I like. Not referring to the D-Squad arc in season 5, which I hate and are my boyfriend's favorite episodes of the show.
They're George Lucas's favorite too.
Yeah. There's some arguments that have happened in this house over Clone Wars episode.
I really want to talk about the scene though after the race when Tech is getting cheered for.
Where Tech is getting cheered for, which do we think that's the first time Tech has ever gotten cheered for something in his life?
That's exactly what I was about to say. Like that scene made me so incredibly emotional and I got like really sappy from it. And I think it's from a character perspective, I think it is something that he never got once growing up. Because remember, the Bad Batch are not regular clones. Because one thing we saw throughout Clone Wars was regular clones would get occasional praise. Like if you think of something like with Waxer and Boyle meeting Numa, when they're leaving the Ryloth village, the entire village is like waving at them and just like, thank you for saving us. But the Bad Batch were essentially special ops. They get in, get out, move on to the next thing, don't form attachments. They don't have a Jedi general. They are just constantly moving. I think it's a far more thankless job compared to what the regular clones got. So I honestly think that this is the first time Tech is being really recognized and praised for something that's outside of like Hunter being like, good job, guys, on to the next. And it's being praised not for being a soldier, not for being a mercenary, but being something that he genuinely wanted to do and he is good at. Now, from a narrative perspective, here's the thing. He used his real name and his face. And I have a feeling that the Empire is going to somehow catch on. That there is a clone with name Tech, somebody that they're aware of and looking for. And even though it's a shady planet, the moment that it starts getting around that, hey, there's this hot new racer on this planet named Tech. I have a feeling that there's a chance that the Empire is going to hear about it and they're going to be following up on this. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was a way for them to pull this back. It depends on how shady the planet is, but I think if something comes back to bite them, it's going to be this scene. And I think that's going to be one of the things that gets the Empire back on their trail, because this is a very public scene of Tech just being like, hi guys, I did a thing. And if Hunter was there or Echo, they'd be like, what are you doing? Put your helmet back on. But they're not. And I love this scene emotionally for him as a character. And if this does come back to bite them, this is the other place where this episode is not filler. But it really depends on whether or not I think they're more likely to follow up on the Sid stuff than follow up on this stuff. But this is the other thing that I think that they could kind of pull back on. Or go back to, I should say.
I have nothing to add to that. That was everything that was in my notes with that scene. So I'm just gonna let that stand on its own.
And his beautiful face, and like right before the screen wipe, he starts to smile, and I wish they would have left it there for like one more second because he flicks his fingers and he starts to smile, but they have the screen wipe, and it makes me sad. I was like, let him smile.
2 more quick notes about the end of the episode. I like how Malegi is actually honorable. I do think that's neat and honors his end of the bargain and kind of tries to warn the batch about Sid. My final note is that, something bad's gonna happen to Sid.
Do you think that Malegi is letting them go now because he's starting to catch on their clones and he might turn them in? And it might be more profitable.
I think he's just letting him go because that was the deal that they made.
Yeah, I think it's like gangster rules, right? Like you're
It's
just like,
gangster
oh well,
rules.
yeah, we respect each other even though we're vying for territory or money or whatever, right? Like it's still like, well, we're still playing a game, and that game has to be respected.
I'm kind of torn, like if he's more of a Hondo type who was very much like a pirate's honor kind of person, or if he's just playing a long game of I think I recognize them from a bounty. I need to look this up, and at least I now know where they are.
Well, I also think that like even with the scenes with Sid and Malegi, I think that they have a history, and whether or not that history is like we've worked together or that's they're romantic. Because I don't know why I was getting those vibes that they maybe have like a history. I was gonna say I don't know. It seemed like he was like I don't think she was ever really in any danger, kind of thing. Like I feel like it was kind of one of those things where he was like, well, I've got you back now. I don't know.
I also think that Malegi is the type that he doesn't want attention. And that's another thing too when it comes to like communities of hustlers like this. The last thing they want is attention from the cops. The last thing they want is attention from the feds. So he's not going to bring something down on himself or Sid that if the Empire moves into his racetrack, there's a good chance they're going to shut it down or they're not going to let him leave. He's not going to be able to leave or they won't leave. So I don't think if something happens related to this, I don't think it's going to be Malegi. I think that he really just let them go because that was the conclusion of their business. Tech 1, they get Sid back. The debt gets wiped, and that is that. We also see the guy, the racer, the Venom racer, was gonna like shoot Tech, and he's like, no, we're just gonna let him go because that's the smart play here. We're gonna go on with our business and keep making money. Alrighty, well, that's all my notes for the episode. Hope, do you have anything we didn't cover that you want to cover?
He's so beautiful. I love my Tech. He's so handsome. I just want to just take that scene in Lilo and Stitch where they first meet Lilo, or they first meet Stitch, and they're talking about how gross he is, and it's the image of like Stitch stuck up to the side of the test tube, and he's just like licking all over it. I just want to do that to his glasses, his face.
I thought you were going to bring up the fact that Malegi is like basically the same type of creature as the giant whale alien from Lilo and Stitch. Like that's what I thought you were going to say, and then you took it to a whole nother level.
I mean,
and
you're
I thought
not
this was
wrong.
Be a cute, innocent little comparison.
Fuck all that right. Alien too.
All right, Disney, where are you? Disney, please come in here quick.
Oh my God!
I have my monster fucker card somewhere around here.
Like, I thought I didn't have one. I thought I was not a monster fucker. And then Skier happened.
I'm gonna let
Black
you know.
Chrysanthemum happened.
Everyone's a furry and a monster fucker. They just don't want to admit it. Everyone is.
I simply think that 2 penises...
I think I hear the music playing for our credits. It's so weird. I think it's already the social music is playing.
That's a joke you'll get if you listen to For Light and Dice.
Everyone's a furry. And have you ever thought a vampire is hot or a werewolf?
I will not be answering any of those questions. However, you can listen to our upcoming Teen Wolf Rewatch podcast.
If you've ever thought a vampire or a werewolf is hot, you're a monster fucker.
We will be premiering on Tyler Posey's OnlyFans, I guess. Yeah. You broke Bradley. Well, great. I have to find somebody else to do the Teen Wolf Rewatch podcast with.
Oh God, I could not finish Teen Wolf. I cannot be of help.
I have never finished it. I watched the
after
first season. I was like, this is garbage. And then
I watched up to the Evo style season, which I really liked, and then everything after that, I was like, no, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch the movie next week when it comes out, but it's a lot.
Bradley, you want to give us your final thoughts on the episode, or your thoughts in general? You didn't have a lot of notes with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, it was just for me, it was just a racing episode, so I wasn't like too like serious about it. But I like what they're going in the direction of like, okay, here's the crosshair episode, here's the tech episode. I hope they continue this trend. I mean, next week is called Entombed. Maybe it's an episode where Wrecker and Omega are stuck in a cave together or something, and we get character development for Wrecker. I don't know, but like I hope that maybe there's just one more singular Bad Batch member who gets an episode, and then we can start getting into more of the other stuff, because I think the episode after that is Tribe, which is going to be the Gunji episode, I'm assuming. So we'll see how it goes. But I liked it overall. I think it was great. I just wasn't like blown away like I was with Crosshair's episode.
Hope, you got any final thoughts on the episode for us?
I had the realization about Bad Batch this week because I think after Resistance and Rebels and the kind of the back half of Clone Wars that this was going to be a serial show, and it kind of clicked with me that no, this show follows more of the first 3 seasons of Clone Wars. It's more episodic, and there's nothing wrong with that because those episodic episodes of Clone Wars are just as important to build like who Anakin and Ahsoka are on these little one-off adventures. And is Faster the best written and directed and executed episode of The Bad Batch? No, it's not. But it's probably my personal favorite episode. I have had a fucking riot watching this. I had the biggest smile on my face. I absolutely loved it. And it just reminded me so much of those early Clone Wars episodes and so much of Star Wars Resistance. And it again just put into my little character loving heart that character development is plot. And it's important. So even if it's not like changing the galaxy and like making Death Stars and stuff like that, character development is plot and it's just as important as the rest of it. What about you, Charles?
My final thoughts on the episode, it's good. I mean, there's not a whole lot that I can say about this episode yet. In terms of like my overall thoughts on it. I'm waiting kind of sort of to see its place in season. Part of me wants to call it some interesting setup for things that will probably happen, especially related to Sid and Tech. But part of me wants to say it was just a fun racing show, and I like when Star Wars is racing, because that also is fun when it's well directed and an interesting script. And was it the episode of Resistance where he's up against Jaeger's up against, is it his brother? I think it's his brother that he's up against.
It is Marcus
Speedster.
Yeah,
is an excellent episode, just a racing episode. So I really enjoy when Star Wars is racing.
That is hands down one of the best episodes of season 1 too, because it's not Death Star level stakes. It's all just personal drama.
So I mean, that's my final thoughts overall. I can't tell whether or not this is a really good episode because it's fun, or a good episode because it's set up for something that's going to happen. I guess retroactively, we'll see. If you're a person who's listening to this in the future, because I know people have gone back and listened to our coverage of specific shows, and I don't at time of recording whether or not this is something that's going to be important for later on. Well, Hope, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this episode. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you other than on For Light and Dice, which we've already discussed?
Well, first of all, thank you for letting me volunteer you guys to let me be on the episode.
That rarely happens, by the way. Normally, I go out to our guests and be like, hey, do you want to come on and do this? Hope messaged me and was like, can I come on and talk about this episode? I was like, yes, absolutely.
I normally wouldn't have done that if you hadn't had given us an open invitation.
It's true. Before. I did give the Flad people an open invitation to come on.
Because usually, like, I'm just sitting there going, well, I want to talk to people too. But like, Charles did give us an open invitation, which is why I was just like, let me talk about tech. You can find me a lot of places, actually. I have, my brain just stopped. You can find me at Jaig and Jedi. That is my podcast that I do with my friend Chris, not the Chris from Dark Side Divas, my Chris, who is a wonderful 55-year-old hippie who is an original Star Wars fan, and I am a new fan, so we mesh and talk about things. But you can also find me at Dark Side of the Force. I'm a contributor for them, and I write about a bunch of different Star Wars stuff over there. I am a staff writer for the Geeky Waffle, where I'm actually reviewing Bad Batch weekly. That is my assignment, and I'm having the best time doing it over there as well, where I also write about all sorts of other animation stuff like Owl House and other fun things. And of course, you can find me on For Light and Dice, and I'm also the chat moderator for Pink Milk on Wednesday nights, where I had to learn what a kiki is. Because I didn't know. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find me, and you can follow me at Hope Mullinax on Twitter.
Awesome. And we will be back next week with another episode of Bad Batch. And you can also find me on For Light and Dice. In the meantime, we just started our second story arc, which is a lot of fun. All right, Bradley, go ahead and run the social.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Send us a message at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Squad Gaze. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post the podcast as well as exclusive content. Please join us next week and every week for more of Gold Squadron Gaze.
By the way, tell Yoda that I do have the stuff that he left at the place. I did manage to grab it. So I will get it back to him when I figure out legally how to get it from point A to point B in a timely manner. He will know what it means.
Okay, that might be have something to do with us just recording for Tales of the Jedi, where we think he might have actually murdered Yaddle. Anyway,
I definitely don't know anything about that. Is what my lawyers have told me to say.